Tell me a little bit more about your career. I know you've had a lot of experience up to this point with a lot of different big brands.
Yeah. So, I mean, I did not at all start in marketing, although I did. It was what I knew I wanted to do. I feel like we chatted about this a little bit, but like I'm a product of South American immigrants, and they basically thought my only options were be an attorney, be a doctor. And I decided to do neither of those things. I wanted to be a creative and I wanted to just share my brain with as many people as humanly possible. So I ended up actually, just pursuing marketing and advertisement. And when I had initially graduated, I was a project manager for I would say probably like 3 or 4 years. I'm super, super grateful for a lot of people that I've met along this journey, a lot of people who are willing to take a chance on me and my talents and my skill set. So I worked on the agency side, like my first touch point was the agency side. One of my clients was Beth Comstock. She was the former CMO and ex-vice chair at GE. And then after that, I transitioned over into Fila, and I was there for a really long time. I led project management on the experiential side, and then I kind of just like grew into a traditional brand management role. And then from there, I actually just took on all of our global partnerships. So I worked really closely with our global team to just make sure that everything was distributed and executed across the globe. I did CPG for a while, and now I'm back in apparel, and I work at GSDQ right now. So yeah, that's
I love it. And that transition, yeah, that transition from agency to brand, how'd that start and how'd that go?
Agency life and brand work are two entirely different beasts. I think the one that I'm most comfortable with and the one that I've sat in for the longest has certainly been on the brand side. The transition wasn't actually tough per se, because I think when you're on the agency side, you're just keeping so many things in the air at once, and you can't have all of your focus on one thing and one end goal. Whereas on the brand side, your only focus is supporting that brand, ensuring that you're increasing that brand equity, doing what you need to do to make sure that everyone who can know about it does know about it. So I would say the transition wasn't tough, but when you're in the weeds of brands, I think that you find people hyper focus. Like they're super, super focused on just that brand and that brand only. And one of my colleagues always says sometimes it's PR, not ER. So I think people kind of get like caught up in the day-to-day of brand, whereas agency, it's super fast paced. And I think everybody has super high expectations, but it does feel a little bit less intense, I think, as weird as that might sound.
Mm. Yeah, well, I tell people I'm 29. I just got a haircut, so you can't see it, but a lot of gray hairs from being an agency for about 5 years. But yeah, I love it. Say that again.
I said I love that you love it, because like agency side, it's super interesting to me. Brand side is just like everybody is like, we live and die by this brand. I don't know if you've worked on have you worked on the brand side or predominantly agency?
Briefly beginning brand, but not enough to say, like the experience you have. It's mainly been agency with that. Yeah. So,
Cool.
And I know that brand partnerships is a big part of what you enjoy doing or what you enjoy implementing. Before we really start talking about brand partnerships, can you just run me through what you define a brand partnership to be, just so I can make sure I'm on the same page as you?
Yeah, I mean, a brand partnership, I think formerly it was more traditionally known as like a collaboration. And in this current day and age, we refer to them as brand partnerships. I think they take on several different forms and just life cycles in general. But in regards to like how I define it is storytelling along somebody or something that is super like-minded, but also helps to kind of drive engagement, drive the needle, drive the conversation, for two partners who just want to support one another. Yeah, I think that feels right.
And when I think of a brand partnership, like different types or categories there could be. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is like co-branded product, or like a collaborative collection, maybe like a shirt and a different a clothing brand and another type of company come together and they make a line, right? Is that the one limitation or the one type of brand partnership? Is there other types of brand partnerships that fall into that?
I mean, I think that there are a ton, right? So you can partner with another brand, on a more like experiential side. So building something together, whether it's like, let's call it a distributor and and an apparel partner, right? So think Coachella is a great example. So Revolve Festival occurs at Coachella. Therefore, Revolve has a brand partnership with Coachella. Or maybe even someone, there could be a clothing company that goes to Revolve for Revolve Fest and then also works with the Coachella. There's also an opportunity to kind of just partner in regards to talent. Talent is a huge brand partnership opportunity. How do you really drive storytelling and help people to better understand what it is that you're doing? Through the lens of another person's platform. I think that's one of the things that has helped me so much, is kind of just either lending my platform or aligning and identifying other creators, artists, whatever it may be, to just kind of do the storytelling together because we're like-minded. So it comes in all forms. If you can think it up, we'll figure it out. I've seen like headphone companies partner with like a workout app. I don't think it's traditional, but it's certainly something that you can make happen. And there's so many different touch points where you guys can show up and collaborate together. So it comes in so many different forms.
Well, that's good to hear. And you know, when you're thinking about different marketing channels, most of them have a root cause they're trying to fix, right? So like, you know, we need to run paid ads. Why? We want more sales, right? We need to run more email marketing. Why? We need to improve LTV or subscription retention or something like that, right? When you're looking at brand partnerships, what's a few things that would make you say a brand partnership is the avenue we need to go for this?
I think that it's just integral. It's integral in your like overarching go-to-market strategy. I don't think it's something that any brand, organization, company can avoid at this point. Every single marketplace, every single vertical is saturated at this point. As human beings, we've had technology for a while now, and we've been on this planet for a while now. So there's not one space where someone can really, I mean, monopolies in of itself are illegal, but like no one can really monopolize or own something. When you think social media, they're constantly competing with one another to kind of like sit in that top spot. And I think that the only way to really do that, and a great example of why brand partnerships will never cease to exist, is when you are sitting on like a social media platform and you see that they start borrowing things from each other. That is not an actual partnership, but they know that in order to survive, they do have to adapt to the other things that are happening in the market. So with that being said, in order to be an awesome and super successful organization, my recommendation is always partnering with other people, things, whatever it may be, to ensure that you're getting that distribution, you have those touch points, you're speaking to consumers in a way that you wouldn't typically think. And it's also just a great opportunity for learning.
Yeah, and I could see it creating just like a psychological connection for the positive if you're partnering with people, influencers, you know, events, whatever, that people already know they enjoy. Right?
Yeah.
That people already keep up with, attend, those types of things as well.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I think one thing also that's really important to me, and I always kind of hammer home on this, is like data. when you partner with other people, you can't data share in the like super traditional sense of like, oh, like let me borrow your email list. You certainly can't do that. But when you partner, you're able to maybe not hand over an email list, but you're able to segment an email alongside this other brand, right? So they can distribute on their channels, I can distribute on mine, and now we've doubled, tripled our audience. Whereas I think if you were just trying to go at it alone, you end up overspending, you end up overexerting. Is it really worth it if you're spending dollar for dollar on paid media versus what you're actually bringing in? I don't think that makes sense. So brand partnerships, I think, is the way to go.
And when you're talking about data, I mean, that's one thing that everybody wants and goes after with all aspects, marketing. And, even when you're talking about, are we going to partner with an influencer, right? Like everything from who is their audience, like what is the demographic makeups of their audience, to what's the engagement rate, and do they have a bunch of bots, whatever that may be. Data is one thing. Is that one of the key things you're looking at when you're trying to decide if a partnership's a good fit, or are there any other factors that you would take into account?
Yeah, I feel like I hate to sound like a like a Gen Z millennial because I'm a little bit cuspy, but sometimes it's just like a vibe. As crazy as that may sound, I think any forward thinking leader is going to take a step back, learn as much as they can about the product, about the products they offer, the organization, the identity, that brand DNA. And then sometimes you just know, okay, this may not make 100% sense, but I do know that this is where I want to be in 5 years. And I feel like these people got it. Like, I feel like this organization understands what we also need to succeed. And I think that is also a huge marker for me. And then value, like beyond data, like let's just think through like the dollars and cents of it all. If I have to pay a ton to distribute more, it's just like kind of wasting dollars on paid media. If your ROAS isn't there, it isn't there. And I don't think that you should pursue it, but I really do stand on sometimes it's just a vibe. It's just a vibe. You can feel it. You see the vision and you want to do some storytelling, and it's just yet another like creative outlet for me, I think.
I'm starting to hear maybe a hatred for Zuckerberg, or just paid ads in general, or are we opposed to the paid ads?
I wouldn't say that because I certainly oversee and I do a ton of media planning also.
Yeah.
But it's just like this industry has shifted so much. Everything is pay to play. Like there's nothing I feel like that ever comes organically. Like we're paying for eyeballs, we're paying for likes, we're paying for clicks. And sometimes I think that's why I go back to it's the vibe. Like if this person feels right and it's organic and there's synergy there, I really do believe that partnership will likely be successful if there's like real alignment.
And I know in some, like in the influencer space or like in the UGC space, one interesting thing that I've seen is there can be very little policing or very little standard of like, what is fair pricing for a UGC creator, or what is fair pricing for an influencer? I think some platforms have done a good job of at least creating transparency of like what rates generally are for creators that way. And of course you can look at it from a CPM perspective and see, but do you feel that influencer rates and UGC rates are a little hyperinflated or have been? Do you think those will continue to rise, or do you think we'll kind of reach a point where things stabilize a little bit in that area?
I think that's actually a really good question. I think it's something that does need to be regulated to a certain extent, but I'm very cautious in saying something like that because it's like, how do you tell somebody what their value is? How do you tell somebody that
that's fair?
Like I think that's what's super tough for me. But it's like, if you have X amount of followers and X engagement and you're charging me if you have 24,000 followers, but you do have a solid amount of engagement and you're charging me like 90K for a post, I'm like, in what world do you think that that's reasonable? But sometimes there are brands that will do it. And so I don't usually sit on that side, but in my experience, especially when I've consulted, I negotiate so differently when I am the seller than when I'm the buyer. And that's why I don't think I have like a straight answer for that piece. But do I think there will be a point in time where there will be like a cap will be put on it? Absolutely. Because when people start to realize that there's so much money in it, things become regulated. Like, if we're being honest, like, look at cannabis. Cannabis has been criminalized and decriminalized and regulated and not regulated in certain states. And I think that's a perfect example of the direction that the industry will eventually go into. There will be like super heavy hitters at the top. I think that this like micro creator community is going to start to shift, and it'll probably be regulated in regards to like, they'll probably have regular salaries. Like, a person with 14,000 followers on Instagram or TikTok is not going to make a ton of money now, but I think it'll actually dwindle. And then those like super huge stars will be treated like our traditional celebrity who's like essentially being paid to work on a movie set. I have a sneaking suspicion that's the direction we'll go, but we'll see. Only time will tell.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, I started thinking too, I guess, I mean, similar, let's just say agency to influencer or to UGC creator when it comes to pricing, right? And for a long time, and there's still agencies that do this, that charge base and percent of spend to where it's just so much that, like, if you look at the P&L, there's no way that the brand could be profitable from running ads, unless they're running $300,000, $400,000 a month on ads, and a lot of brands aren't. Unless the agency has very good case study and value to show how they're going to get the better results. And I think on the UGC side or on the influencer side, an area of opportunity for a lot of that community, and this isn't a bad thing, I just think it would be good to see, is case study or proof of conversion rates from efforts with their content, and like case studies from prior clients, because then there's a lot less uncertainty. And you can actually have, belief or trust that paying the cost will get you the result that could pay it off that way as well.
Yeah, and I think also one of the other things to consider, which makes it super tough, is brand equity, right? So sometimes it's dollar for dollar. Like, what is our ROI here in regards to like the profitability of this organization? But then on the other end, especially when you're at a newer company, or whether it's apparel, it could be anything, lack of brand equity will eventually lead to the failure or the demise of that organization. If people don't know who you are, they're certainly not going to buy your product. So I think data reporting, especially in regards to content, is so difficult. And as technology grows and shifts and changes, like, my hope is that we figure out better ways to define. Like, I might spend $100K on some paid media and garner 75 million impressions, but I'm not going to make $75 million, not right now. But there's no way to track how this investment that I made today is impacting this business 5 years from now. And I think that's what makes data, especially on the paid media side, on the digital side, so difficult to digest and so difficult for people to understand, because it's really an investment in your future. It's like putting money in a 401k. Like, the $300, $400 that you might put in this month has nothing to do with where you'll be at in 25 years. And that's a great way to look at your paid media investment.
Well, and with the brand equity piece, my mind immediately knee jerks to how do we measure that? And I think I'm thinking about it incorrectly by thinking about how we measure it. Tell me just a little bit more about like your mindset behind brand equity. And I guess the question that I'm really trying to get to is, like, let's say you're talking to a CEO at a new company you're at or something. How do you pitch or how do you sell brand equity investments versus dollar for dollar paid media? Do you know what I mean?
It's super difficult. It's something that try my best I try my best to frame through the lens of impressions. How many eyeballs am I getting on this? And why this investment is so important, because it helps to drive the business. Like, I'm able to see certain things super quickly where it's like, yeah, there's an uptick in traffic. If I have an influencer at an event that I spent $100,000 on, and that person has 22 million 22 million followers, off the top, I have 22 million impressions, because there's potential for 22 million screens to see this content. But then that's where things start to get dicey, because it's like the only tool that I feel like brand marketers and digital marketers, I mean, marketers in general, have to kind of justify these huge budgets and this huge spend for the sake of brand equity. But then on the flip side, then on social, on the back end, like I mentioned earlier, it's pay to play. So it's like, it's almost impossible. Moral of the story is, it's almost impossible. It's really difficult to kind of explain that to someone, but all you can really do is be super patient, educate yourself as much as possible. I mean, I know for a fact the digital landscape changes every single day. So I'm cognizant of that, and I try my best to just kind of run with the fact that, look, there are several unknowns, but I do know that this has helped me in the past. So I'm just going to keep doing what works.
And I may be drawing at strings here, but in the SaaS world or in the software world, there's often the battle between collaborative buy-in on marketing efforts versus sales efforts, because a lot of times in software, marketing efforts are really just sales efforts instead of like generating demand. And I'm thinking that maybe, kind of similar, just different things within e-commerce or within direct-to-consumer, which is like it takes the mental buy-in from the top down on brand equity in addition to or as a piece of marketing with like the paid media and stuff like that.
I totally agree. And I mean, something interesting that you said was like sales versus marketing, but like on the SaaS side, it's all sales. I had the opportunity to sit on a commercial team where marketing and sales sat together. I think, and that never happens. Like, that never happens. It's always like sales versus marketing, and everyone always thinks that the other is never doing anything. Like, sales always thinks that we play with colors, and we always think that sales is like kind of like on the marketing side, we're always like, oh, they're so lazy. But I think that really helped. That partnership really helped us to figure out, like, what is this path to profitability? Like, what numbers do you need to hit? So like, I have to throw as many things at the wall to, one, expand brand equity, and two, convince people to buy, like, support my sales team, support those sales channels. So I think that was an awesome learning experience, and I actually recommend it. Like, if more sales and marketing teams like sat under a commercial umbrella, we'd be in an awesome place. Like, that's the number one thing I think I learned in my last role.
Yeah, sales and marketing combined is a dream for anyone in the software world listening to this. So you don't have to share any like specific brand names or anything super specific, but do you have any examples of a time that you went about a partnership and either surprises came up or it just turned out to be not the best, outcome that you were looking for? And I'm asking just to understand, like, a little bit more on how you go about looking at evaluating, the brand equity and the efforts and things.
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I think one thing that's really important to address that I think not enough marketers talk about, a huge part of marketing is just a networking game. Like, how can you how can you broker these relationships and nurture these relationships so that you are supporting one another in a meaningful and impactful way? I'm totally cool name dropping this one, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind. Samuel Cross, he's like such an inspiration to me. I have partnered with him in the apparel space. I've partnered with him in the CPG space, and he owns an apparel company, right? So, Cross New York, they're a mission-driven apparel organization, and anytime I've partnered with them, maybe the sales haven't been where they needed to be, but in regards to impression, in regards to like growing brand equity, in regards to relying on one another and supporting one another to make amazing things come to light, I think that is the best of the best. The worst, I don't think I've really had a bad brand partnership experience, and that's probably why I like it so much, because I can always find the silver lining, right? So if it's not, okay, it didn't sell as well as we thought it would, but here's all the data that we got from it. Like, here's all the distribution. Here are the number of followers we got from it. Here are the number of impressions. Like, the product didn't do well. We got some feedback, but we also got to have this awesome activation and speak to and connect with so many different people. Like, I've purchased media and hosted a dinner and done all these things, and then I've accidentally like met an influencer with the huge following at this dinner that I would have never had access to, and now I can work with them for the rest of my career. Like, I've never had a bad experience. I've never not learned in regards to brand partnerships, especially with talent. Talent, I think, have always been like the craziest brand partnerships for me, because like a great example is like I've had talent come, and for a few hours of their time, it would cost me 250 to 300K for, and based on the relationships that I've brokered and nurtured, they'll come for free. And that in of itself is the value in the partnership, like that's a huge deal. So I really don't have anything. And maybe that's the marketer in me who can always like reframe everyone's thinking. I'm like, okay, I wasn't successful in this regard, but we did this. I don't have anything negative to say, but talent is a huge one. Like, talent has made so many things so much more exciting and useful and successful.
When you say talent, you mean like actors, influencers, musicians, things like that?
Yep, like models. Okay. You're not going to be able to justify. You're never going to be able to justify the spend of hiring Kendall Jenner, for example, like dollar for dollar. You're never going to be able to track, like, because we put her in this brand campaign, we were able to make X. You can't do that. But I can negotiate in a hard post and some whitelisting, and then garner a couple 100 million impressions, expand my brand equity. Like, I think what Coach and Hugo Boss are doing right now is absolutely brilliant, because they're really leveraging talent to drive the needle. Like, they were super quiet for a while. Like, I remember more about them in the earlier 2000s and the 90s. But now in this influencer creator culture, they're really leveraging people to help drive the brand. They're identifying them. They're paying whatever dollar amount. They're producing photo shoots that are also an additional dollar amount, and they can't track dollar for dollar, but that brand equity is there.
No, that makes sense. This has been a lot to think about here, mindset wise. If you had to summarize everything we've discussed today into a marketing mindset, what mindset should marketers and business owners have when it comes to brand partnerships, brand equity?
Brand equity is of utmost importance. Brand perception. I know that there are a lot of tools out there that I think are leveraging AI to create these like brand indexes. I don't know how useful they are just yet. I think that they assist us in collecting a ton of data, but brand equity is always going to be king. If everyone knows who you are and they like what you do, and their responses are genuine, like generally positive, and when it is negative, you take that feedback and you make those adjustments, you're able to succeed. Like you will succeed. And then also just the data that you can collect from brand partnerships with other brands, or nurturing those relationships with people at other brands, talent, whatever it may be, is so important. Like, don't lose human connection. That's what it is. Don't lose human connection. I think technology is beautiful. It's brilliant. It really helps us in our day to day, but don't forget that we are humans. Be a human first and connect with people. We're all consumers, therefore it shouldn't be this difficult to figure out how to talk to them. So never forget that you're a person and a consumer first.
I love that. And yeah, I love that. And yeah, with the brand equity, you say anything's possible. It's that, puts me on a 2-hour or 3-hour voyage looking for a thermos cup at Dick's Sporting Goods because they just released a new color line and all of them are sold out. All 10 Dick's Sporting Goods in the area are sold out. And then you end up seeing them on eBay. They were $45 for, I think, like $200. The Stanley cups. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Crazy.
Yeah. And think about Stanley. Like, Stanley, to my earlier point, has the king of brand equity. Everybody knows who Stanley is. Everybody knows they need a Stanley Cup. They're like little 5-year-olds running around. Like, they're not going to be the coolest kindergartner if they don't have a Stanley Cup. The girls in college are doing it. I'm sure Alex Earl has a Stanley Cup. Like, Stanley figured it out. They figure out every touch point, but they valued brand equity. Everyone knows Stanley. Everyone knows what Xerox is, even if that's not your copy machine. You might still call it a Xerox. So that's why I really value brand equity.
And for anyone listening that's in the stage of figuring out what they'd like to do in the marketing industry, what marketing role or roles do you think will have the highest demand in the next 3 to 5 years?
That's a really good question. I think that it's going to be like product managers.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Project managers, and data analysts. Because although we keep on utilizing AI, it's abundantly clear that there's no emotion there. So like, someone has to be able to gather the data, interpret the data, and then spit out what it really means. AI can listen to conversations on the web and pull all these things together, but they cannot. They
quantitatively.
They don't. They don't have empathy. They don't understand a human being as a human being would. So I think data analysts are going to be huge, and then I think product managers, only because there seems to be a gap between like merchandising or product development and like ensuring that those margins are there. Like, how can we get products at the best rate, but also be cognizant like of sustainability, be cognizant of DEI, be cognizant of all of these things that so many people never had to account for before. So I think that's something that I think more people will have. And then project managers, just because like we need organization and there's so many moving pieces, and marketing usually touches every part of an organization, from finance all the way down to obviously like graphic design, creative design, like any element of design. So I think project managers are going to be really important in regards to just like keeping everything together.
I love it. And tell us, where can listeners connect with you and learn more about your business?
Yeah, certainly I would say LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm Maya Angela Yearwood on Instagram, and then LinkedIn, I'm just Maya Yearwood. That's probably the easiest way.
Maya, I appreciate you coming on today. I feel like I learned a lot about branding, brand equity, so I appreciate you sharing everything with the listeners.
Awesome. Thank you.